Hello. I'm Masha Korpacheva, and welcome to another episode of In the Mood for California. This podcast is a soulful journey through Los Angeles, its neighborhoods, architecture, hidden histories, creativity, and the remarkable people who give this city its spirit. Most weeks, we wander through the neighborhoods of Los Angeles, uncover the stories behind remarkable homes, revisit old Hollywood, or meet the artists, architects, and dreamers who have shaped this extraordinary city. But today, I'd like to invite you somewhere a little deeper.
But if I want to access those places inside of me that are the source of the pain, it's almost like you have to go to the very source of the pain to heal the pain. You have to bring it up from the depths in order to allow the wisdom of your body, the wisdom of your mind, the wisdom of your heart to transform that pain from something that's been held onto consciously or unconsciously, and transform it into something that you can release. You can forgive it. You can trust the experience. You can trust yourself. And in that trust, those sources of pain inside can slowly, step by step, little by little, or sometimes dramatically all at once. But those sources of pain within can transform into something else, which is beauty.
Los Angeles has always been more than a city. It has been a place where people come not only to reinvent their careers, but to rediscover themselves. For decades, seekers from around the world have brought with them meditation, yoga, Eastern philosophy, indigenous wisdom, and countless paths toward healing and self-understanding. In many ways, ayahuasca has become part of that story. While its sacred origins lie deep in the Amazon rainforest, where indigenous communities have worked with this plant medicine for centuries, its teachings have found a place in Los Angeles, a city that has long embraced the exploration of consciousness, spirituality, and personal transformation. It's a subject that inspires curiosity, skepticism, hope, and sometimes misunderstanding. Rather than offering simple answers, I wanted to create space for an honest, thoughtful conversation with someone who has devoted his life to healing and who has spent decades approaching this work with humility, wisdom, and profound respect for the traditions from which it comes. So my guest today is Dr. Richard Grossman, a licensed acupuncturist, doctor of Oriental medicine, and internationally recognized healer whose life's work has been devoted to helping people heal in body, mind, and spirit. His fascination with healing began in childhood, inspiring a lifelong search that took him from studying Eastern philosophy and meditation in India to advanced training in acupuncture in Los Angeles and Beijing. For more than 4 decades, he has combined Oriental medicine, indigenous healing traditions, energetic medicine, and sound healing into a unique approach that has touched the lives of people around the world. He is also the author of several acclaimed books, including Trust and Forgive, The Medicine of Your Life, and Feather on the Heart, in which he shares his insights on healing, consciousness, and living a more meaningful life. Today, we'll explore Dr. Grossman's extraordinary journey, discuss the nature of healing and consciousness, and have a thoughtful conversation about ayahuasca, its traditions, its place in modern society, and the profound questions it invites us to ask about ourselves. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Maria.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a treat for me to have you as my guest today on my podcast. So thank you for finding the time in your busy schedule.
Thank you.
Well, Richard, the first question I'd like to ask you is about the city of Los Angeles, because This city means so many different things to various people. So for some, it's a city of dreams. For others, it's a place of transformation. And for many, it is also a teacher in disguise. And after all these years of living and working here, what is your Los Angeles?
My Los Angeles is vast. It's such a big place. And I can pretty much look at major parts of my life, and they are all related to where I was living at the time. For example, I grew up in Brentwood, and my growing up in Brentwood I had no idea the rest of the city was out there. I was Brentwood, the Palisades, Westwood Village, Santa Monica a little bit. But as far as the rest of the city went, it might be something that I saw when my family was going on outings to visit friends or to Disneyland, but it wasn't part of my life. And then as I started growing up, more and more parts of Los Angeles became part of my life. And for example, I lived close to downtown for a while in a spiritual ashram, and that was definitely transformation and growth. I lived in Santa Monica as an acupuncturist and as a householder, family person for many years. And that growth was business, was learning how to do business and also learning how to be balanced in my life to make sure every day I took walks to the beach and walked along the boardwalk and rode my bicycle along the boardwalk. I live up in Topanga Canyon now, and it's as far from Los Angeles as you can get and still be in Los Angeles, energetic wise. I go hiking in the mountains and see coyotes and mountain lion tracks sometimes and bear tracks sometimes and beautiful flowers and plants. And it's like a refuge for me now. So there's cultural aspects of it. When I spent time in downtown in the art scene, that was fun. I really enjoyed that. Although I didn't really enjoy driving to downtown so much.
Right. Nobody does.
Nobody does.
Okay.
And it's been also a place where I've allowed myself or been allowed to grow in my current work, which is the shamanic style work with plant medicines. And so Los Angeles is, I think you could look at Los Angeles as like a hologram in a way. Everybody's going to see their piece of it, what it means to them. If this was a small town, you'd have a cafe or two, you'd have a library, you'd have a gas station, you'd have nothing much going on. And everybody in the town would be kind of in the same general mode, right? They'd have the same experiences in general, not always, of course, but not specifically, but in general. Los Angeles, you can have two people could have a day in Los Angeles and have radically different experiences.
Yes.
And so every person's going to either seek out or be shown or bump into or, accidentally fall into some experiences, each one of which has the capacity to alter their life for the good or for the challenging.
Interesting.
It's vast. That's the thing about Los Angeles.
Yes.
No other city I've been to like it.
So do you think if you lived in a different city, not Los Angeles, would you have had this experience as a human being, and would you have grown into this healer that you are now if it was not for Los Angeles?
Good question. Possibly. I just made up a word. Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah, because some of the experiences I had, especially as a child, were probably things that wouldn't have happened if I had been anywhere else. And I can't say that they were pleasant experiences, but those experiences took me into a state of mind where I had to heal my inner being. I had to heal my traumas. I had to work deeper than I would have if I'd grown up, say, on a farm someplace. So those experiences, those early childhood experiences were motivation, sometimes unwanted motivation, but they were motivation that kept me going in a path of healing. And, would I have chosen a different path? Probably not, because even though it was painful, I'm really, really happy with who I am today and what I am today and what I've accomplished in my life.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, do you think there is something inherent in the city itself that naturally prepares people to go for deeper spiritual work?
There's an open-mindedness here that I've not seen in a whole lot of other places. And somebody was saying to me the other day, what was it? That spiritual energy travels from east to west. And so California has a plethora of spiritual energy right now. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds interesting. But I think the openness of Los Angeles, the hugeness of it, the multiple communities, Hollywood has definitely an effect on it. And I'm not sure whether the general zeitgeist of the Los Angeles mindset has influenced Hollywood or Hollywood has influenced the mindset, but they both go together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the open-mindedness, I've used that word a lot, but that to me is Los Angeles is very open-minded
Mm-hmm.
and very open to changes, very open to new ideas. Everybody's looking for the next greatest thing here. And for a long time, spirituality, shamanism, meditation was it. Probably starting around the early 1970s is when it started to come in here strongly.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yes, yes, I can absolutely see how open-minded Los Angeles is, and it as if invites people to be free to themselves, to be free who they truly are, something they don't allow themselves to be in any other part of the world or United States.
Yeah, and the climate has something to do with it too, because here we have, I forgot exactly, but like 300 days of sun a year, something like that.
Yes.
And that's going to open up people. That's just going to be an opening experience because we're not running off for 3 months of the year, running from our work to the car or subway to the house and cloistering in the house because it's so bloody cold outside. You don't want to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
instead, it's like, well, it's another beautiful day in Los Angeles. What are we going to do? Let's go to the beach. Let's go hiking. Let's go see a movie. Let's go out to Koreatown and have Korean food, or little Tokyo and have Japanese food, or Chinatown and have Chinese food. It's wonderful.
Right, right, very true. And some people also referred to Los Angeles as the city that allows you to be anonymous because it's so vast, as you mentioned earlier, is that the anonymity of the big city when you can just do and be wherever you want to be, and not that many people will know you.
Yeah, that's a good thing to look at.
Mm-hmm. And Richard, I want to go deeper into the work that you do because you have devoted much of your life to working with ayahuasca, the plant medicine, and guiding others through profound inner journeys. Looking back, do you think people come to the medicine searching for healing, or are they really searching for a deeper relationship with themselves?
Yes, to both. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
to both. And you can't, in my mind, you can't really separate those two things because, illness can easily have its root or its causative factor in a person's separation from who they really are, in a person trying to fit into a mold that perhaps their family, perhaps their friends, perhaps their school, perhaps their work, perhaps their society is trying to compress them into. And in doing so, a person can lose really track of not so much who they are, but what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because who I am could be quantified by what I do, by what I like to eat, what movies I like, who my friends are. Am I a beach or a mountain person? Those can be all of the who's of life, but the what is so much deeper. It gets down to a place of what, what am I? What am I? And that what turns out to be incredibly beautiful, incredibly joyful, incredibly transformative, and not an idea, not a philosophy, not even a practice, but an experience of God within, one could say.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the word God in a totally non-religious sense, but as an experience of divinity, of infinity, of pure, perfect love within. That's the what I am. That's the what you are. That's the what everybody is. And so people come to ayahuasca work. Usually the first reason is because they're in pain. They're in emotional pain or physical illness or something's, relationship pain. Something's not right in their life. And many people will do one or two ceremonies and think, I'm done. That's all I need. I'm better. And, for what they came for, they may very well be better. But then there's those who choose to go deeper into it. And for them, something infinite opens up, something that has no beginning and has no end. And, that's the Socratic know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
What is the self? What is thyself? And, in Los Angeles, of course, anybody who's listening will say, well, I've heard all that stuff before, because this is part of our vocabulary here,
Yes.
But is it something that you're hearing and the mind is making a conceptual analysis of it and pegging it into certain past experiences that you've had? Or is there an understanding of what could be called the exact moment of now, which is where the magic lives, which is where the majesty lives, which is where God lives? And it's always there. We're not always there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are too busy resolving world problems.
Or causing them.
Yes, while resolving them. So, would you say that it is mostly pain that becomes this great catalyst for people to come to ayahuasca?
Yeah, what's the purpose of pain is such an interesting thing to look at.
Yes.
So, for example, and I've used this example a lot. If I had one of the worst diseases you could possibly have in the past, leprosy, how does leprosy work? You lose the ability to feel pain. And so you injure yourself, don't take care of it because it doesn't hurt. Things get infected, it gets worse and worse and worse. And ultimately you become disfigured, you lose limbs or digits or whatever, because you didn't feel any pain. So for example, if I'm walking out my front door and I fall down and hurt myself, I'm going to feel pain. Why? Why do I feel pain? This is such a big question. Why do I feel pain? Because nature in its wisdom says, here is this strong sensation you cannot ignore. Take care of it. Mm-hmm. Take care of it. So pain is a motivating factor for taking care of that within or without that is out of harmony, is broken, is causing distress. So if I didn't have emotional pain, I would never grow.
Right.
If I have emotional pain, I have to access those places inside of me with help, without help, usually with help, because we're not very good at doing this by ourselves. But if I want to access those places inside of me that are the source of the pain, it's almost like you have to go to the very source of the pain to heal the pain. You have to bring it up from the depths in order to allow the wisdom of your body, the wisdom of your mind, the wisdom of your heart to transform that pain in from something that's been held onto consciously or unconsciously, and transform it into something that you can release. You can forgive it. You can trust the experience. You can trust yourself. And in that trust, those sources of pain inside can slowly, step by step, little by little, or sometimes dramatically all at once. But those sources of pain within can transform into something else, which is beauty.
Yes, yes. And isn't it fascinating how if you have physical pain and the neurons notify us, okay, you have to pay attention to that, it's much easier to deal with as compared to emotional pain when you cannot just release it instantly, that you have to fully step up and take responsibility for it and make this very conscious decision to go deeper to the root of this emotional pain in order to let it go, to dissolve it, and first to accept it and then to dissolve it. And I think there is this very intelligent, emotionally intelligent factor that comes in when we're dealing with the emotional pain within ourselves that is prompting us to get to know ourselves better and deeper and take responsibility for it.
Indeed. And this is something that also is very important to understand. If I am in an accident or if I get ill and say I'm in an accident, I break my leg badly and I'm hospitalized and I'm going to be in the hospital for a few weeks, it's okay. I'll get sick leave. I'll probably get paid for sick leave if I might have a job. I don't get paid for sick leave because my employer is a cheapskate and I don't pay myself that well. But, there's a respect for that. There's a respect for physical injury in our society.
Yes.
However, if my beloved, my wife or my child dies tragically, the average amount of time a person is allowed off from work in the United States is, I think, 2 to 3 days to recover, to do all the funeral arrangements, to whatever needs to be done. Not even enough time to begin the process of mourning. And you're supposed to go to work in a few days, all chipper and smiling and, ready to go to work and make your employer lots of money.
Yeah.
It's something that's really off in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of emotional wounds should be so respected and they should be so taken care of. A person should get a month off in that kind of situation, in my mind. They should be able to go to a place where, trauma is released, where mourning is allowed to happen, where letting go is allowed to happen until they come back to themselves. Because when there's something on that level that happens, even losing a really good friend or a best friend is so traumatic, and we're expected to be normal in a few days.
Yes, yes. Well, maybe it's because people are so practical, and when they cannot see it or they cannot touch it, they cannot measure it in any way. And the depth of human pain is sometimes quite immeasurable, and people are afraid of it in some way. If someone is experiencing pain and the other person is next to them, they cannot quite feel for them as much as that person is feeling, right?
Because they see in your pain the fear that it might become their pain through a similar situation.
Mm.
If if a friend of mine's parents die, I would be thinking about my parents.
Mm-hmm.
If a friend of mine loses a child, I would be thinking about my child. And it's a rare person who can hold space for somebody who's really in pain, without giving them advice, without telling them what they think, without saying everything's okay, or, it's okay, they're in heaven, they're in a better place, all of these cliches we use, instead of just allowing yourself to be with the person who's grieving. Just to be, not to say, not to talk, unless they talk to you, but not to give advice. I think that's
Yes.
something in our culture that is, in a way, almost pathological, is pathological advice givers, who want to help for the best reasons, for the best reasons they want to help.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the best way you could help a person is just by being still.
Yes.
Allowing them to be exactly where they are.
Very, very true. And I know that if a person is experiencing fear, if a person is experiencing fear, that means that in that moment there is no space for them to experience love. And if they're afraid that if they provide compassion to the person going through emotional pain, that means in that moment they cannot feel love for them. And love is probably the strongest of human emotions. And just being in love heals the whole world, not just like one single human being. So, do you think that when people are trying to avoid emotional pain, there is something inside of them that is trying to run away from their capacity to love, that they're actually afraid to open up to love?
That's a mind-blowing question. I may not be able to answer that, which is unusual for me. But it's certainly fear as a method for escaping love. I think if a person's in fear, they've forgotten that love exists. You can't be in fear and be in love, like you said. What's the cause of the fear? There's rational fear and irrational fear. Rational fear is don't try crossing Wilshire Boulevard with your eyes closed. You shouldn't do that. You just shouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. Irrational fear is sometimes it's even fear of somebody dying. Like, for example, my grandfather, bless his soul, started talking about he was going to die soon when he was around 50 years old. And he believed it. He believed it. And he was nervous about it. He died at 94 years old.
Wow, it's a lifetime of fear.
Yeah, so that was irrational. I don't think he held it that strongly his whole life. At some point it was like, what the heck, But that would be an example of an irrational fear. We're all going to die, but why be afraid of it? Because nobody knows when. Mm-hmm. And, being afraid of it's not going to stop it. Being afraid of it's not going to change it. Might as well learn how to meet whatever transitions and transformations happen to a person with an open heart. I believe if my heart is open at the moment I'm dying, where I'll go is love.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Because love or experiencing love is the closest that we can be to divinity.
I think it was Jesus who said God is love. And I don't think he was being metaphorical. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was a metaphor. I think God is equals. God equals love. Therefore, love equals God. Mm-hmm. And, mathematically speaking, that's the equation. And that being true, what do we have to be afraid of? What is there to be afraid of? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. We're afraid of the unknown, but the unknown is only unknown as long as it's unknown. And then when you know it, it's no longer unknown and generally no longer as scary as you think it was going to be. And, the caveat to all of this is a lot of people are in horrible situations in their life. I mean, really, legitimately war zones, you know about that,
Of course, of course.
they're in legitimately horrible situations. And I don't want to make light of that in any way, shape, or form by saying it's all love, baby. It's not. There is that aspect of darkness that is very, very challenging to face, very, very challenging to get through. And during those times, if you're running from somebody who's attacking you, you just want to let that fear get your catecholamines up to high levels so you can run as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's the purpose of legitimate fear. It prepares the body to face an emergency. Versus the existential angst a lot of people who are not in war zones or not in physical immediate danger live their lives in. And that's the irrational fear that can be worked on with therapy, with plant medicines, with meditation, with listening to music, with a lot of things. But the legitimate fear, that fear is there for an absolutely life-saving, purpose, and can't be judged.
Right.
Can't be judged.
It's at the level of the instinct. It's not something that we can control even in any way.
No, our instinct to survive.
Mm-hmm. So, Richard, you have witnessed hundreds and perhaps even thousands of ceremonies without sharing anything confidential. Maybe you have noticed that beneath people's different stories and cultures and backgrounds, that they all seem to arrive carrying the same hidden wound. I know we talked profoundly about fear and pain, and if there is some hidden wound beneath all of us, beneath all of humanity, do you believe that we are collectively trying to heal this hidden wound? And what would that be?
Yeah. I'm not a Kabbalist, but Kabbalah has a beautiful way of looking at this in that, the one, at one point there was nothing but what we would call God today. Although God could be any word you want to use for that one. That broke into fragments, and those fragments became eventually, it's a long process, but they became the individual sparks within a person of light, of love, of soul, of essence, of who we are. So we could say that the original wound was that breaking apart, and that the purpose of human life is to restore wholeness, to repair the breaking that happened, so that we do become unified with that love inside again.
Yes.
And if that could be the original wound, and I believe every other wound that a person gets is in some way, and this is going to sound kind of heartless maybe, but it's not meant to be. But every other wound a person gets is to show them where they're broken. Sometimes the wounds break people. That's a whole nother issue. But to help them restore themselves through their own healing to unity with divinity within. So whether people come to the ceremonies with all manner of different whys they come, it could be a heartbreak, it could be physical illness, it could be an injury, it could be existential angst, whatever. But almost always by the time the ceremony is over, the weekend is over, or the week is over, or whatever it is, there's an energy in the room of peace. There's an energy in the room of people who have been to battle and won. People who've been through the pits and got out of the pits and are now sitting in a state of harmony and peace. And that's the common factor at the end of a ceremony that I look for that tells me this was a really good ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the pin drop moment when the silence is so profound. And I'm not just talking about physical silence, I'm talking about heart silence, mind silence, body silence. Everything is silent. It's just such a beautiful state to experience.
Wow, it's like the silence of the universe.
Silence of the universe.
Mm.
Usually at that point, a motorcycle goes tearing by, but
Interesting,
joking
interesting.
about that.
Yes, yes. Well, many people speak of ayahuasca as though it has its own intelligence. Would you say that ayahuasca has this capacity, for intelligence? And how would you describe it? Like, who or what is ayahuasca?
This is the big question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, different ways of looking at it. I'm not going to say one is right or one isn't, because in a big sense, we don't really know. And in a big sense, whatever experience a person has that shows them what ayahuasca is a subjective experience. I may have an experience of ayahuasca as the goddess. The person next to me might have an experience of ayahuasca as a plant or as a jaguar or as memories or as light or as spinning strands of DNA in the cosmos. There's many different ways of experiencing it. For me, what it is, and I go back and forth on this. I used to believe it was that the plants themselves opened up the door to the spiritual realm where ayahuasca as a spirit being existed and allowed that interface to be open. The more that I work with the medicine, the less that works for me, because the interface is the medicine opens up the door to my soul so I can walk through the door to my soul and know who I am. So it's a teacher, it's a guide. There's danger in this, because sometimes what the plant medicine will do is cause inflation, ego inflation in people. And that's where you get what are my most dreaded words to hear after ceremony is ayahuasca told me to ... That's ego inflation. Does a plant speak English or Russian or Ukrainian or Chinese or whatever? Plants don't speak language that are human languages. They speak in the language of plants, which is chemistry. And so that inflation comes with a great deal of risk. And it could be inflation from plant medicine, or it could be inflation from a spiritual or religious experience. The Jerusalem syndrome is a fascinating thing that some people know about, some people don't. It's where a person or a tour group, usually they're Christian oriented, go to Jerusalem for a tour, and one of the people in the group suddenly vanishes. They go to his hotel room. All the sheets are taken off of his bed, and they find him wrapped up in the sheets someplace on a street corner, preaching as though he thinks he was Jesus, which he did. Or she. So that's Jerusalem syndrome. It's when the soul, the spirit, the mind break a little bit. And that would be called breaking the vessel. We were talking about that earlier. But that breaking then allows the ego to become inflated and for a person to think they're much more than they already are. On the other hand, I could legitimately say God dwells within me, and it's not an ego inflation. It's an actual experience I'm having. Or I could say, God told me to tell you. It's a whole different message, right? Mm-hmm. That would be inflation. That would be an ego inflation. Um, God told me to tell you you're really fantastic and you need to just meditate more. That's good advice, you know.
Yes.
But God told me to tell you you've got to blah, blah, blah. Usually not good advice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, usually pretty bad advice. Because is it God or is it mind? And that's where a ton of experience and working with good teachers is really important in plant medicine, because for the beginners, they have these powerful plants inside of them. And it's so easy to take a side trip into delusion. For example, here's another one. This is not out of the ayahuasca world, it's out of the meditation world, but there's the idea of the path of the razor's edge. And the idea is that, okay, here's the story. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is teaching Arjun archery. I'm not sure it was Krishna. It could have been one of his uncles. But anyway, Arjun, the hero of the story, is learning archery with his brothers. And one of the brothers, the teacher, archery teacher, points to a tree and said, "What do you see?" And the brother says, "I see a tree. I see branches and leaves. I see a bird's nest over there. I see the other trees around it. But in that tree is a bird." And he says to the second brother, "What do you see?" And he said, "I see a tree and a bird." The third brother, "What do you see?" "I see the bird." It gets to Arjun and he says, "What do you see?" And Arjun says, "I see the bird's eye."
Mm.
So take your shot, you know. And that's like the path of the razor's edge. I can be walking on this path, especially during ceremony, for example. I can be walking on the path of, you know, they call it a camino or a way or a path in the jungle. You know, I can be on this path, which is a path of the music, the breath, presence, experience. And suddenly I'm seeing something off to the side that looks really attractive. And maybe it's some god, or out of the Hindu tradition, or maybe it's angels, or maybe it's something other than the pure aspect of self. And then, you know, because the mind is attracted to stuff like that, the mind goes off and spends the rest of the ceremony dancing in the seventh level or fourth level of heaven with Krishna, you know. Beautiful, beautiful experience, something that many people would cherish, right?
Yeah.
For me, it means that you haven't gone as deep as you can go, because at the deepest level that a person can go, there is nothing but God. You are experiencing nothing but the infinite. And one could look at those side trips, I call them, as being astral planes. A lot of people want to astral travel. I would say don't do that. But a lot of people want to, and that's okay if they want to. But, you know, you're going into the realm of imagination at that point. You're not in the realm of reality anymore. You're in the realm of imagination. Even if it's not your imagination, it could be the imagination of the universe. But you're not in perfect clarity. Mm-hmm. And the result is, you know, I may go dance for 6 hours with Krishna and the gopis, especially the gopis, you know, in Vrindavan and whatever. You know, I'm not putting this philosophy down. I happen to really love everything about South Asian philosophy. This is for example. But, you know, I've just spent hours learning about something else, not knowing myself. Mm-hmm. I spent hours, you know, whatever it is, fighting dragons, you know, going into the spaceships with the ETs. I'm not going into my soul and spirit. And again, for me, that's the highest level of work anybody can do in any practice, is to know thyself, know yourself, be it meditation, be it whatever. And the interesting thing about that knowing yourself path is, because in that idea that the self is not the small self, the big self is God, or is a particle of God, or is part of God, or, who knows? Who knows? People have all sorts of ideas about this. But if I go into that place that is perfect inside of me, that is a never-ending journey, because no matter how deep I go, there's going to always be more. You cannot get to the end of the infinite.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get to the full experience of perfect infinite love, because no matter how far you go, there's more infinity in front of you. That's why some people will say that, no matter where you are on your journey, you're still just scratching the surface. And that's humbling.
Yes.
Not humiliating, it's humbling to know that, if my soul is timeless and deathless, I have nothing to fear, and the soul is timeless and deathless by every metric I can look at it from my own subjective experiences.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is so special, Richard. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing this wisdom with me and with the listeners, and to wind down.
This is what I live for.
Yes. I feel this. I feel that this is something that you truly live for. So, to wind down our conversation, I wanted to ask you about your books, because you have written, several books, and they weave together decades of your experience with healing and consciousness and ayahuasca. So, when you look back, do you see them as records of what you have come to know, or would you say that maybe they're milestones in your own ongoing evolution?
Wow. The first book, Trust and Forgive, The Medicine of Your Life, is now, as of a few days ago, in its second edition. So I wrote it 4, 5, 6 years ago, over 3 or 4 years, and now it's been not rewritten but modernized and brought into this time period. And that's semi-autobiographical memoir. I call it a teaching memoir, although there's no book category of teaching memoirs. But I go back and forth from my own experiences and what those experiences showed me. Usually there's a poem between most chapters. Well, there is a poem between most chapters. And then there's some chapters that are more philosophical, and there's a few that are just downright fun. So it's a journey, start to finish. And that didn't start off with ayahuasca, and it didn't end with ayahuasca, but ayahuasca played, and other plant medicines played a major role in it. And it's not an easy book in some places, and in some places you'll be on the floor laughing. The second book that I just finished recently is called Feather on the Heart. And that actually was seeded from an experience I had in an ayahuasca ceremony and in a healing session with somebody. And I had a very, very powerful, I would call it almost a past life experience, although I don't know if it was past life or universal unconscious mind, as Jung would say. But I had an experience. I had a very real three-dimensional experience. And when I came out of that experience, it wasn't finished. I hadn't gone to the end of the experience. I was like left high and dry. And so I started writing about it and started turning it into a screenplay. This was more like 20 years ago. But I started turning it into a screenplay, and then you'll have to read Trust and Forgive to find out exactly how it happened. But then I completed that learning, which led to the rest of the book pretty easily, or rest of the movie pretty easily being finished. And I fulfilled the requirement of anybody who lives in Los Angeles to write a screenplay. I'm very, very proud of myself.
Wonderful.
I was about to get kicked out. Unfortunately, nobody wanted the screenplay, so I put it away, forgot about it. Essentially, I forgot about it until I finished Trust and Forgive and gave myself some time to recover from it. And then this little niggling thought came into my mind of, what about that movie? Why don't you turn it into a book? And now it's a book, plus a lot more than the movie, because it's, it's many, many hours longer than a movie could be. And I'm really happy with it. I think it's a mind-blowing book that takes a journey. The big question of it, which wasn't the question of the movie, but the big question of the book is, what is a father willing to do to save his daughter's life? And the other aspect, the subheading for it is, where did trauma start? And it traces trauma back to 500,000 years ago.
Wow.
Along with a present day story of the main character discovering that he's going crazy and having visions and hearing voices and realities bending around him. And somebody keeps on saying, you have to go to the Amazon. You have to go to the Amazon to save your daughter. And he does.
Wow, we'll have to have a whole other, time dedicated to speaking about your Amazon experience. It would be, I think, very, very special.
Yeah, I'd be happy to read half a chapter out of the book too, if you'd ever like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your time, for your heart, for your wisdom and openness, and holding this wonderful space filled with love for so many human beings, and for having chosen this path over shaman, over healer, and it's a never-ending journey. And I'm wishing you, to always have the wings behind you and a feather on your heart, just the name of your book, to continue doing this incredible work that you do. So thank you so much. And thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you. This was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Well, until next time.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for tuning in for the conversation with my special guest, Dr. Richard Grossman. If you enjoy my podcast, In the Mood for California, please sign up for future episodes at your preferred platform. And please, please, please leave your feedback. I really appreciate your time and support. You can follow me on Instagram at In the Mood for California, and check out my website, www.inthemoodforcalifornia.com. Until next time, I'm already looking forward to it.